Peace be unto you, everybody. Welcome. I would like to welcome all the participants for this session. With you is Shams Al-Blushi from Mohammed Baraj Al Maktoum Foundation for Knowledge in collaboration with the UN Program for Development. I would like to welcome Dr. Hayel Obeidat, who has participated with us in this amazing subject, which is the food security and the following challenges. Welcome, everybody. And I would like to say that the doctor will talk about this subject and we will open the Q&As. The floor is yours, doctor. Thank you, doctor. I would like to thank the Sheikh Mohammed Baraj Foundation for this invitation and for this activity, the amazing activity, because the world right now is facing a big challenge in the food sector. And allow me today to start this session. Allah has said, in the name of Allah, most merciful, most gracious, let them worship the Lord of this house who has fed them from hunger and secured them against fear. The word security has recently been repeated, especially since the spread of acts of violence and terrorism in some countries, and security in its national concept includes all aspects of life that concerns mankind. It includes also food and economic security and living sufficiency. And where security symbolizes protection from the dangers of crime, hunger, disease, pollution, unemployment, violation of human rights, and the stability of life, which leads to citizens feeling that they have fixed pillars in his society that preserves his existence, entity, and attachment to his land, homeland, and states. Stability in life of the citizen is a necessary factor to maintain his social balance and considered one of the basis human securities to provide basic services to citizen so that he does not feel destitution or need or frustration. The issue of food safety is still the subject of unresolved debate, not only in the Middle East, but most countries of the world, and what some governments in the region and the world are doing through the competent institutions to improve people's access for food, which means the production of food within a single country equivalent or exceeding local demand, and the provision of food in sufficiency, quantity, and quality to meet the needs, and the possibility of obtaining food in ways to ensure sustainability. And also it is different from food sufficiency, which means the ability to achieve self-reliance in the production of all the food needs of society. Food security is closely linked to human national security, as the food problem represents a human tragedy, as millions of people die of hunger annually in the world that has reached the highest level of civilization and progress. And what complicates the problem is the malnourishment and the lack of justice in the distribution of national wealth, especially in the region of the third world, which is tried of poverty, ignorance, and underdevelopment meet. And the security of food is directly or indirectly linked to the tranquility of the soul and the dignity of the citizen. And you can see that the gap is widening between local food production and increasing consumption as a natural result of population growth of more than 2.6%, and where the amount of the global food bill is more than $2.6 trillion, the per capita spends annually globally about 37%, and in the African countries are most spent, sometimes reaching 48 to 56% of their income on food base, besides the government spending, while the percentage of spending in the Arab countries reaches 32% up to 43% in the Arab and Gulf countries. We can see the expenditure is between 12 and 26%. The United States 6%, and the Western Europe between 12 and 13%, taking into account the higher income per capita and family and the disparity in the interest in social and religious events. Even though that there is almost approximately 792 million people in the developing countries and 34 million people in the developed countries, around billion people who are not accessing food in the correct way. And in some of the countries, the deficiency in Africa, around 16 countries, in Asia, 11 countries, and 4 in Europe, and seven countries in Latin America. While food waste is around 1.3 billion tons of provided food, and it's considered a big problem and a global problem, this waste in food, which costs around $780 billion annually. The food basket, if we go to the next slide, it consists of next slide, please. It consists of 6 to 8 basic commodities led by cereals, wheat, rice, meat, vegetables, oils, corn, sunflower, sugar, dairy, milk, vegetables, legumes, fruits, etc. But the decline in the production, agricultural production in the Arab countries, and the negligence of agriculture by some countries as an Arab strategic national in various kinds sounds the alarm about the future of the food of human security in the Arab world and the countries in the third world, where the negligence in the agricultural land and the field, especially with the tensions and the conflicts in the Middle East, where it is a hotbed for conflict and tension in many countries of the world, especially in the Arab region and the African region. The situations, the regional situation is considered very negligent, and in some of the countries are affected of it. And also the dependence on the rain, which is very vibrant, and the lack of the agricultural land and provision of the very basic demands of the human beings, and considering the import as a main helpful, as a main way to get the food, especially if when we're talking about the world bill for food imported is equal to $3 trillion, and it's constitutes 34% of the household income in the most countries of the world. Also, the wastage around 780 billion annually. So we can imagine the big bill of food globally in every year. From the foregoing, identifying the most important factors and variables that have led to the widening of the food gap in the world and its negative impact on the economic and social stability of those countries, the high volume of indebtedness and increase in unemployment and poverty, especially in rural areas, in order to reach action programs that will help reduce the food gap. Let's go back to the concept of food security. In order to reach the action programs that will help reduce the food gap and influence patterns of social behaviors. While there is no magic formula for achieving food security in countries, it's required to address this challenge and coordinate efforts for an effective strategy to achieve food security. Everybody should collaborate in this problem and challenge to achieve the food security. The first one and the most important is to provide an appropriate mechanism for social safety nets. In every country around the world, there is a network for food security and social safety. The second one is investment in research and technology, agriculture and food production, and the creation of appropriate structures to encourage water use efficiency and improve crop production and everything that is related to the agriculture and the agricultural products and the food baskets, which counts on the availability of water, whether it's rain or it is direct watering, to help with the management of this deficiency. And the third pillar, the strategic pillar, is the application of a risk management system that faces volatility of international markets. The COVID-19 pandemic and its social and economic repercussions have come to constitute an obstacle to global economic and social stability, which led to the high prices and slowed recovery and economic growth to wake the world to after 1 year, around 1 year or 2 years after COVID-19, the world wake to the Ukraine-Russian crisis to constitute a severe blow with all its repercussions and its link to the file of energy and gas sanctions, high prices, and the lack of strategic stocks in energy and food globally, which led to the decline in global economic growth, increased inflations, high prices, and severe shortages. Also, this severe shortages in some of the commodities was as a result of the closure of some of the ports, which led to some difficulties to export barley and wheat and other basic food products from those countries of conflict, which constitutes the productions of Russia and Ukraine. It constitutes 33% of the value of the world production, and most countries depend on it more than 50 up to 80 or 90% in some countries such as Algeria and some of the Northern African countries such as Tunisia or Egypt, more than 90% in Tunisia and 61% in Egypt, especially the wheat imported from Russia and Ukraine, and some of the Asian countries, and also that followed by the recent tension in China Sea and the Pacific Ocean that made us live the problem of the ocean and the sea transportation more than so many ships cannot travel in the sea because of this tension around the world. The world production of cereals is about 1940 million tons, and wheat constitutes 722 million metric tons. The value of the world consumption is more than 220 million metric tons of wheat, worth $50 billion annually. And Russia and Ukraine, as we spoke before, constitutes 30% of this world production. And North Africa, around 14 countries in North Africa, the countries of the Caucasus and Central Asia import more than 50% and may reach 80% of their grain needs. That makes it always a part of this fluctuation, and they are always in stress to all of these variations that wheat in particular has several climate, geopolitical, and social factors, and is always exposed to prices and social fluctuations. And the Ukraine crisis came with the new repercussions, also posed new problems and challenges, not only for these countries who are depending on wheat from Russia and Ukraine, but most of the countries of the world, due to the link of food and the food industry to the file of energy and gas. Also, in addition to the repeated expansion of the following, the approach of blockade and imposition of economic sanctions in violation of national conventions by some countries on the Russian production. And Germany has tried to breach this gap and to provide alternative to help the world overcome the food crisis, but it didn't. It couldn't. Not Germany, neither France or the rest of the European countries. They were not able to pose themselves as alternatives to help with this food crisis happening. And for example, Germany produces is about 12 million tons per year, consuming 20% of its production and 58% for feeding livestock and 9% for energy production. Other alternatives, whether from America, Australia, or Latin America, have not been able to compensate for the shortage and fill the food gap for many reasons. The most important is the high prices, cost of shipping, transportation, insurance, as well as closure of the ports of the Black Sea, that led to the fatal blow and the entry of the food crisis into the tunnel that threatens social peace. Also, China and Russia and India, as countries producing wheat, they were not able to export because countries started to care for their needs first and to also create a strategic stock and to increase the years and the duration of the stock, a strategic stock. That's why it became a crisis. A state of uncertainty prevails over the effects and repercussions of the crisis and conflict between other countries, energy, tourism, transport, insurance, supply chains. And this question is posed: are we in the world moving towards a global food crisis? It's affected by millions of people, meaning around more than 70 million people will be added because of this crisis to the other 400 million people who are suffering before the corona and COVID-19. And also, what's the type of the impact on the oil and gas and the productions of cereals and the vegetables and the also the production of the agricultural fertilizers and the impact of this on the supply chain, because more than 42 countries in the world depend on the Russian and the Ukraine production of the food basket, where cereals, oils, corn, vegetables, sunflower, fish, meat, and poultry are formed. And the link also to the prolongation of the crisis, where the Russian exports accounted for 33% of exports to Africa and Ukraine 12%, where Russia provides 30% of the global supply of wheat, Ukraine 70%, and so on. And we cannot, and there's link between, and also, can we jump from low levels of social welfare, stability of investment, and the extent to which hunger, famine, and price turmoil are linked, and the rise of up to 45% inflation exceeding 9% in food, energy, and gas. Some of the countries' inflation has reached more than 8%. Britain, France, Germany, the inflation passed 7% also, and the crisis is expected to disrupt supply chains and also that affects the stocks and the stakes, because people will be affected, and the stocks will be affected of agriculture. And that's where the importance of the respond, where all available and appropriate tools to the nature and the high and the supply of chains and piracy of ships and high production costs, agriculture, transport, insurance, as well as a decrease in crop yields and incomes, and difficulties in harvesting, especially in the Middle East countries. In the Middle East, there's 20% of them are suffering the deficiency and lack of food security. And here, the importance of willing to respond with all available and appropriate tools to the nature of the habitat and the vulnerability at the country level. And what is more dangerous, that the fear of expanding an approach of domination and imposing sanctions on any country for no reason other than not meeting the dictates of some countries, thus making other countries and people prey to poverty and famine. Among the most important challenges facing the safety and availability of food are the increasing rise in population, forced migration, limited natural resources, poor productivity of countries, obstacles facing the food sectors, the climate change, which is one of the current challenges, and the provision of the safe strategic stock of strategic goods, the provision of an integrated land and sea transport chains, in addition to the sometimes low prices, high taxes, and customs duties, and the bureaucracy in some of the countries, regions, for example, the Middle East and the North Africa. There's no magic formula for achieving food security in any Arab country, where all the Arab world is living in a state of food deficit that is intensifying day by day. But what is required is to coordinate efforts between all competent authorities in the private, public, and the private sector, and also the academic sector, for any effective and practices benefit from these countries who benefit from other ways of agriculture, such as water growing. UAE is one of the examples. Also, the economical and the regional collaboration between countries to find effective strategies to increase the level of food security, which is a very strategic choice for any country now. When we are looking for new technologies in agriculture, such as smart agricultural methods and mechanisms. Some of the countries they have great initiatives. Also, before the Ukraine-Russian conflict and the COVID-19 challenges, but there is more than 5 to 7 million children dying annually from malnutrition-related diseases, and the direct medical costs of malnutrition in developing countries are estimated about $30 billion annually, and undernourishment is in developing countries costs more than 220 million years of productive life. It costs us more than 220 million years, in addition to other other effects, and the family members also whose age is decreasing or affected by deficits due to malnourishment. If we move if we want to talk about more than 1 billion people who are living for a daily income of less $1, 845 million people who are constitutes 18% of the developed countries. They live under the $1 of income daily, in addition to 70 million who are affected by the Russian-Ukraine crisis. They will be added to the number of the undernourished people and the people under the poverty. Also, the children, more than 10 million children yearly are affected and being sickened by the malnourishment and undernourishment because of these sicknesses related and illnesses related to malnourishment. Around $30 billion is the cost of these of these medical costs. We can say that the optimal exploitation of natural resources, the human and financial, to increase productivity in agriculture in the Arab world. Also, we say that it can be said that the optimal exploitation of natural resources and financial to increase productivity in agriculture is the main input to the development of the Arab agricultural sector, and achieving a better status of food security requires this enhancing Arab capacity through integration and coordination between national and regional development policies, or in the Arab countries, especially in the agricultural field. Also, enhancing cooperation and coordination between agricultural research institutes and employing them for the benefit of people. Hence, the objective of the food security strategy can be summarized in enhancing efforts of integration, coordination, modernization, development, and adoption of modern agricultural technologies, and the development of its productive and competitive capacity, development and conservation of natural resources, and preservation of the environmental, to ensure the achievement of the objects of the current generation, future generations, and an integrated framework that achieves the interests of all countries is called also sustainable development. At the end, I would like to thank the Mohammed bin Rashid Foundation. I would like to thank everybody who listened to us in this session. I would like to apologize for the time, and peace be unto you. Thank you, Doctor. We are very thankful, and we have lots of questions, and we will pick and choose because some of the questions are similar, and so we will choose one of each of the similar questions to answer them. I will start with the first question, one of our attendants. What's the problem if the countries can achieve their food security based on the provided resources that we have? What's stopping the Arab countries from achieving food security based on the human resources and the financial resources that we have? At the beginning, we would like to say that there should be an integration, an Arab integration in this field, because the variety of the geography and the cultures and the fields of land, it will help in bridging the gap. But the problem that there is a big gap that is not related to food. The important gap is the technological gap and the negligence of agriculture. Sudan, for example, is one of the countries of good, but there is no infrastructure to facilitate the access of the product to the market. Also, there is an absence for investment in the food industries and the agriculture. But I think after the Ukraine-Russian conflict crisis, lots of crises faced the world, but the food were not used before as a weapon, and also sanctions were not used in this aggressive way. That made the world understand that we are facing, if there's any tension between any country and the other, we are facing a food problem. So that's why in our Arab world and African worlds are willing to invest in the agricultural field, and also other countries are starting to invest in the food and the food security and agriculture in other countries as well. So I think collaboration is always between countries, especially neighboring countries, is a way to achieve systems, regional and international systems, to fill or breach this gap of the food deficiency. But food security is something is not achievable by one country in itself. It's not a miracle solution. There has to be a collaboration between multiple countries, and we hope that Arab countries are able to do that in the near future. Thank you, Doctor. Also, another interesting question in two parts. The participation started with how can the government play a big role, an important role in management of the food waste, and when everybody is hurt from, such as producers and consumers, from the supply chain. Is there any possible solutions, long-term solutions for this crisis? Is it the food crisis or the Ukraine? We're talking about food supply challenge. Yes. First, the supply chain system in the Arab world, we were advised lately to invest in this field. It was always the companies of the supply chains were transport companies managed by major companies, major countries, but from 10 years ago onwards, we woke up to have a definitive saying in this field. For example, UAE has achieved very big, very many steps in activating ports, and now it's confident and able to make an advised decision and an independent decision to manage these ports inside and outside the UAE, which is a good way of managing supply chain. We start, when we talk about supply chain, we start from the place the product is produced to the ports, to being transported to other countries, from the country of origin to the country of consumption. So ports are very important to be managed and to have a saying on them. Also, when we talk about the supply chain, when the Black Sea ports were closed, the land the land transport and the river transport was not able to fulfill the problem was created by the closure of the Black Sea ports. Even though until yesterday there is statistics about the decrease in the level of waters in the Rhine in Germany. So many of the industrial countries depend on the river transport. So now industries are asking the government and people if there is a lower level of water. These companies are being initiative to overcome this problem, because it will be a big obstacle and hindrance to their industries. These problems are related to countries, to companies, countries like Germany and the Rhine rivers water levels, which decreased. Also, at the same time, any other conflict areas where land ports and water ports, the alternatives could not fulfill the needs on other ways of transport. Also, the supply chain challenge is not only the transportation, also the provision of products as well. So I remember in one of the discussions before, our brothers in country like Sudan had produce, but the transportation was not available for the user and the exporters to move it to other cities. So the land transport, the train routes and export routes are very important for supply chain, also to manage the food wastes. And thank you, doctor. Also, I have another interesting question. I would like to apologize because we will not be able to read all the questions, but this is the last question, doctor. I hope we can answer all the questions, but most of them were answered during the session. One of them said that I was interested in every year I see there is a problem in food, and that stops us from achieving our goals in food security. What are the remaining problems happening all the time? How do we face these challenges all the time happening? The food security and the food crisis is not something that is available in a certain country. It affects all the countries around the world, especially the developing countries, Middle East and North Africa, even some of the developed countries like America, Germany, and other countries. They are facing this problem, but the percentage is different. The only solution is, as I think, the sustainable development, the linking of the human resources and the country, any country, with their social and economical needs. When we talk about sustainable development, to decrease the financial and the food gap and deficiency, and also the availability of the produces the main commodities, and the availability of systems to provide food for everybody in a humanitarian and humane way, and to keep the welfare of people. This should be a just system, and provide enough food for the families and the households, and it should be easy to access these commodities and food. When we talked about 780 million people around the world who are not being able to access food around the world, Also, if there's any earthquake, if there's any conflict, any global crisis, this will increase the number of people who are not being able to access food on a daily basis. Russian crisis increased also the number. COVID-19 added 200 million more people who are not able to access food on a daily basis. All of these affect the food security, but we need to set strategic goals and plans for any country on the level of the country, whether in short or long term. They are emergency plans, and also every country should be prepared for these kinds of crises. Also, risk management should be there for food security, and the more important thing, because priorities are different from a country to another. The commodities, the main commodities of this country, they should have a strategic stock management for it, at least for the upcoming 6 months, because we know after 6 months we are able to solve the problem, whatever it is. So this strategy of managing the stock of the 7 most main commodities in a country will help to solve and to reduce the repercussions of any crisis happening on the food. The food crisis is not something that will be solved for once and all. Because people in many countries, needs are different. And also the increase of the cities' land and the decrease in shortage of agricultural land is also always affecting the food production. So we have to collaborate and also integrate the civil land increase with the availability of land to provide agricultural produces, even though we need buildings and new cities to be built. So when we talk about the food safety is something that we can achieve, but food security is something that is really difficult to achieve. There's an increase in the population in every country of the world is trying to reduce the explosion of population. All of these factors play a big role in the achieving the food security and to reinforce it and to provide the needed food for everybody. So whether you are a producing country and you have self-sufficiency, but other countries are importing countries and they do not have this self-sufficiency. So there should be a collaboration between all of these countries to provide the food basket for their own population, and also collaboration between sectors inside the country, the one country, such as the private and the semi-private and the public sector, also giving encouragements and enhancements for the field of agriculture. Also, the regional collaboration between countries will help to stop the increase of this crisis, but it will not help it for once and for all. I will give. There's one more question. It goes with the answer that you gave us. One of the attendants said, what do you see in the concept of power in exchange for food? This is a natural thing because it's a trade relationships, and I don't think there's a problem with it. And thank God we are producers of energy, and some other countries are producers of food. There should be a formula, strategic formula, and if this formula is achieved between countries, there's no problem. But we don't want to be affected by it. It might be a problem sometimes if we want to be honest, the food file for the first time is related and linked to energy. This is the first time in human race. But now sanctions exists. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sanctioned. And linking food to energy, it appeared for the first time in lots of our Arab world countries are able to link them together as a safety measure, also a way of negotiation. And this is proved by our countries lately with the Russian-Ukraine crisis, and the world has also proved that the linking between food and energy is something that exists, and they affect each other. So we cannot deny that. I don't know if I've answered your question. Yes. I would like to thank you very much with the guests who attended with us, and also even China and India, they proved also they can link food with energy instead of in spite of India is a producer for wheat and sugar, and they stopped export of sugar, and they made other contracts and agreements with other countries to secure and to secure the stock, the strategic stock for food. So they have linked also files of the food and energy. Brazil did that also, but we don't want to talk about this thing that there is a politicization of the files of food and energy. I don't want to say that, but this is what is happening. Dr. Hayel Obeidat, would like to thank you very much for this amazing session for the food security and the upcoming challenges. I would like to thank the attendances, and we would like to tell you that we, in every other week and fortnight, we have this this kind of session. I would like to thank you, Doctor, and your final words. Thank you. I would like to thank once again the Foundation of Mohammed bin Rashid, and also would like to thank the attendance. So we hope you all the safety and security and the growth and development of the UAE, and we hope the safety and stability and the security of the country